Good morning, everybody. We'll be picking up where we left off last week, starting in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. As always, it's a beautiful day to be in the house of the Lord, to come into His presence and study His Word, trying to get a little bit closer to this awesome God and Creator that we have, and the fellowship with our brothers and sisters. This Word is awesome, and it's just an amazing journey to go through this Word and get a little bit closer to that Creator that, wrote this Word and gave us all life and hope through His Son, Jesus Christ. So again, Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. So where we left off last week, Christ had just talked about back up in verse 20, about that our righteousness had to exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. He's trying to basically say that we can't be hypocrites and that we have to be true with our beliefs and serving Him with a true heart. He goes into more detail about this. That's where we're starting at verse 21. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. So, obviously, killing people is not a good idea. It's a bad thing to take somebody's life in cold blood or out of anger, wrath, whatever it may be. So he's saying, don't do that. That's an obvious thing. Most people understand that. But he goes on to explain a little bit deeper in that. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother Raca shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say thou fool shall be in danger of hellfire. So he's saying if you're angry with your brother without a cause, and that's saying, there's anger, there's wrath, there's turmoil in your heart and your mind, you'll be in danger of judgment. Moving on, then I looked up Raca. So that's basically back in that time, that was just like a really offenseful thing to say to somebody. That's you were trying to break their spirit. You're basically saying they were worthless, that they wasn't worth anything. They were, they were stupid. They were not worth nothing. They were worthless. It was considered a really big insult back in that time to say that. And so basically, you're damaging somebody's self-esteem, their mental aspect, how they feel about themselves mentally, emotionally. It's a damaging thing. It's a huge insult there. You're basically telling them that they're worthless. And so, to do that to somebody, he's saying you'd be in danger of the council with that. But then going on into that, saying that if you call somebody a fool, you're in danger of hellfire, which is, of course, being cast out into the lake of fire there in the end and destroyed. But basically what he's saying here is like, this is where your heart is. If there's not that love in your heart, there's going to be evil, there's going to be anger, wrath, or pain, whatever it is there, and that's going to come out, and you're going to lash out at other people and try to hurt other people and make them sad or angry, whatever it is you're feeling. And so that's the root of the problem here. It's not the actions that you take are bad. Absolutely, yes. Offending somebody, hurting their feelings, breaking them mentally, emotionally, whatever it may be. What he's saying here, call them a fool, which of course, the Bible says that a fool, believes in his heart there is no God. So calling somebody a fool is a very powerful thing, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, obviously. But, he's saying that your heart is the problem here. Because if there's that, if you have love in your heart, you're not going to be mean towards these people. You're not going to be wrathful. You're not going to say angry things. You're not going to, if you do have something comes up where somebody's offended you or whatever, you're not going to let that anger eat at you. You're going to take care of that problem with love and try to talk to this person and work things out. You're not going to attack them and try to break them down and get them back, even the score, whatever you want to look at it here. And so that's what the root of this problem is. All these things here, let that seed of bitterness get into your heart and in your mind. And then that's what brings forth, the violence and the killing and all this other stuff. So, what he's saying here is take care of the root of the problem that's causing this, that then becomes a fruition of that sin, and it grows, and then you're angry with somebody and you beat them down or you kill them or whatever. It says the anger that you do, or if you kill somebody or you beat them down with your words or whatever, he said that's just the ending of that bitterness, anger that's in your heart. So he's saying you have to have a clear heart here. And that's why he's warning all these people, that you got to take care of your inside first, that spiritual man. We have to crucify that flesh and let the spirit be strong so that these other things don't come out in you. Because whatever's in your heart is going to come out. If there's joy and peace and hope in Christ, you're not going to be screaming and yelling at everybody. You're not going to be beating them. You're not going to want to kill them. You're not going to be angry. You're going to have that hope and peace in Him, just like Christ did. If you're full of this world and you have anger and hate and sorrow and all that stuff, then that's what's going to come out. And so what he was trying to teach him here is that that's what the truth is. It's like the problem is not in the actions that you're taking, but those are just the results of what's in your heart. So the problem is your heart. Where is our heart? If we have a heart after God, and we're full of Christ and His Spirit, and we're washed in that blood, these things aren't going to be the things that we do. That's not going to be our actions. We're going to have love and compassion and peace towards each other. So moving on, verse 23. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, then come after and offer thy gift. So what he's saying there is that, if you've got something in your heart against somebody else, then you have that separation and that relationship between you and God also. So we have to try to make our peace with those around us. Now we have to do our part. That's not going to say that we can fix everything. There's going to be people in your life that refuse to get along with you. They're always going to have something against you just because of, how you are. Maybe it's because you changed and you left them behind because, maybe you got saved and you made changes in your life. There'll be people that'll fight you against that because they're still full of this world. Maybe some people just aren't going to get along with you, whatever it may be. But the fault has to be on their side, not yours. You have to make your peace. You have to make your effort and try to go to them in love and peace. Pray for them. God can move and He can change hearts. How do I know that? Well, He's changed mine. I've had problems and things that I had to go through, and I thought I could fix them myself, made them worse. But when I did it His way, I sought Him and said, Lord, I don't know how to fix this. Teach me, show me what I need to do. Help me. Because I realize I'm the problem. Fix me, and then He can move and fix things. But we need to do our part to try to get along with others. And if we love them and we're good to them and they're mean to us, that's going to be on them. That's not us. We got to do our part. Keep praying for them. Maybe God can change their heart. And maybe the actions that we take towards them will open that door for the Spirit to move on them. But if we're just like they are, they're going to say, well, there's nothing to God. Because look, they say they go to church. They say they know Jesus. They're serving God. And they're just as mean and angry as I am. That's a bad thing. We can't be that example. We got to be like Christ. Verse 25. Agree with thine adversary quickly, whiles thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. So, of course, when we make that decision to serve God, we're citizens of heaven then. We're just here on this earth visiting, doing these things, but we're still bound by the earthly laws that are here. So if we do have an argument, we have a disagreement, something comes up between us and somebody else, we need to make sure we're doing our part to take care of that quickly. That's a command that God's gave us because, like I said, if we're acting just like this world, we'll be in danger to be judged by this world, and we'll be judged by this word also. Good, bad, or ugly, this word is going to be what we're judged by. So He's telling us we have to try our best to get along with other people, whether they're trying their best to get along with us or not. Because going on, it says, Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. So it's saying it's going to cost us if we live like this world. And it says it'll cost you everything. Your uttermost farthing, that means it'll cost you everything. So, if we're full of this world, we still live like this world, that means we're still of this world. That means we're lost. We're not one of His. And that will cost us our soul, ultimately. It says everything. So we can't be like this world anymore. We have to do the best that we can. And is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. I've prayed about relationships and things that I had that, were broken and that were difficult, whatever, for years sometimes. before, finally God moved and did what he had to do. And you know what? Most of the time, he changed me. To be honest, he changed me. I was me, and it took so long because I wouldn't let go. Just being honest here this morning, like I said, I don't want anybody to ever think that I've got everything all figured out and, I'm walking a perfect line. I'd love to be able to say that I am, but, it's a journey. We all have to keep moving forward and get a little better each day. Pray a little more, get a little bit closer, dig deeper in this word, and try to build that relationship with Christ a little bit more every day. That's what we got to do. Make sure we're always keeping our eyes on him. But again, we have to do our absolute best each and every day. Wake up every morning. Like Joshua said, for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And that's what we got to do every day. He gives us, we wake up, we open our eyes, thank him for another day, and be like, what do I need to do today? What have you got on tap for us today? What do I need to do to serve you today? And we have to have that mentality throughout the day. And, it's going to be hard. We're going to wake up and we're going to have aches and pains. We're going to have situations come up in life. There's going to be, trouble at work, family issues, maybe there's deaths in the family, this, that. Things are going to happen. It's not always going to be easy. But if we keep our eyes on him, he'll carry us through. We have that promise with him. So going on, verse 27. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Like we were saying earlier, and I was talking about the other things in the verses a few minutes ago, the problem lies in the heart. And because the action, of course, is bad. If you've committed a sin, no matter what it is, the case here maybe is adultery we're talking about, but no matter what it is, it's like it had to start in your heart. And then how did it get in your heart? What started in your mind? You had a thought, something come by. You looked at something, you heard something that you didn't need to see or didn't need to hear, and then you let it sink into your mind. And then it grew in your mind and it sunk down into your heart, and then that's when it got in your heart. And then with the things that get in your heart are it's what your body's going to do. Whatever's in that heart of ours, if it's good, good's going to come out. If it's bad, bad's going to come out. And so what Christ is trying to tell them there, it's like, look, the problem starts in your mind and in your heart. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you feed your mind, it's going to sink down into your heart and into your soul, and it's going to affect the things that you do. And that's why it's so important for us to not look upon bad things and not to listen to bad things and to avoid all that we can of these things. Now, of course, in this world, if you're out working, you're going to be around people that don't think like you do, that don't speak like you, they don't talk like you, whatever it is. If you're walking through the stores, you're going to hear and see things. But the idea is to limit this. We don't go home and turn on that TV and watch stuff we shouldn't be watching. We don't listen to the radio and listen to stuff that we shouldn't be hearing. We gotta filter that stuff out. We have to do what we can to get closer to him. If it's not drawing you closer to God, it's a stumbling block. I know that's kind of hard. It's kind of straight, but this word, this is red writing here. This is Christ speaking himself. It doesn't get any closer to God than Christ speaking it itself here. So, and we have to be separated. The word says that. We're supposed to be peculiar and stand out. We're not supposed to blend in with this world. If, somebody can't, that works with us or knows us and spends time with us, can't tell we're a Christian without us saying, hey, I'm a Christian, there's a problem. They should be able to tell by the way we talk, the way we act, and the things we say and we do, and how we handle turmoil in our lives. We should be different. We should look different. Because there's something different inside of us. That Holy Spirit dwelling within us. Christ is in our heart. When we've been cleansed in that blood, we're different. We're made a new creature. So Christ is telling us we have to be that new creature. And our heart has to be pure. Because that's where all these sins come from. That there's darkness, there's evil, there's something in your heart that's not right. And it grows, and then that's what we follow. Because we're going to follow our heart. Whatever you put your heart on is what you're going to follow. Because that's just the way that the body works. And so if it's filled with trash in this world, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have sin and evil. If it's filled with his holiness, his righteousness, this word and Christ, then there's going to be peace. And there's going to be fruitful things that are happening. It's going to be good. We're going to walk more holy. We're going to walk more righteous because of what's in our heart. Going on. How serious is this? Christ is going to tell us here in verse 29. If thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. So he's actually saying here, if you can't control the way you look, the things that you look upon and all these kind of things, it may be better for you to blind yourself so that you don't open your door to that sin. Now, do you literally need to pluck your eyeball out? I don't know. How serious can you get close to God to turn yourself away from being able to control yourself? You know what I mean? If you get close enough to Him, you're not going to have to pluck your eyeball out, because again, your heart's going to be full of Him and you're not going to look upon these things. But I think the point that he's trying to drive home here is that this is serious. This is not a joking matter. It's not light. That this is a very heavy, serious matter here. That, what you put into your body through your vision, through your hearing, and the things that you allow in your mind, the thoughts you think, and what's in your heart is serious business, because it's going to be how you live. If you're not seeking Him and you're not trying to do better and you're not trying to serve Him and fill yourself with this Word, your mind and your heart with this Word, and live this Word, you're going to be in trouble. And He's trying to tell you here, don't let your flesh rule your life. The Spirit, His Spirit has to guide you and lead you. Going on, verse 30. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. Again, he's telling us that we have to control this flesh. We have to pick up our cross and follow Him, just like He said. Crucify this flesh daily. Don't give in to these fleshly lusts and enticements and all the things that this body wants. We have to beat it down and make it weak so the Spirit can be strong in us. And how we're going to do that? We're going to feed it with this Word. We're going to feed it with prayer. We're going to spend time with Him, having a relationship. It's just like the relationships in our lives. The people that you spend the most time with, and that you are getting along with, and that you love and you spend your time with, that's going to be your strongest relationship. Somebody you don't ever see and don't ever talk to, that relationship's going to dry up and it's going to be weak. Just like your spiritual life. If you're not praying daily, you're not reading your Word daily, you're not spending some time with Him and building that relationship, it's going to grow weak spiritually, and this flesh is going to be strong. But when you do all the things you're supposed to do, seek Him and build that relationship, the flesh will grow weak and the Spirit will grow strong. And that's what Christ is telling us. It's all about your heart and where your heart is. Your heart and the Spirit can beat this body. And you don't have to maim yourself then, because the body's going to be weak and it's going to be in its place. And that new man that lives inside you, that new man and the new spirit, from the blood of Christ washing you clean and the Spirit regenerating you, making that new man, that's going to help you. And you're not going to have to do these things, because the Spirit will be strong, and you'll not look at these things. You'll not hear these things. You'll not do these offensive things. So again, how serious is this? It's life and death. Whatever is in your heart is what you're going to speak. It's what you're going to live. It's what you're going to love. If it's this world, then you'll find damnation. You've severed that relationship with God. If Christ is in your heart and you're doing the best that you can, loving God first, and then loving the people that He's put in your life, your neighbors, all those people you interact with, then you're going to be all right. But again, it's where your heart is. Moving on, verse 31. It hath been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. Of course, this is Christ talking about back when Moses told the people, when they were complaining and fussing at him, that he told them that, that they could have divorces under certain circumstances whatsoever it might have been back then. But Christ is trying to tell them a better way here. And He's trying to say, look, this is the way. But I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery, and whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery. So he's saying this is a serious thing, that back in that day, it's just like now, people marry and divorce and remarry, do all these things just like, just like it's any other type of relationship, like they were just dating, and it's not that big a deal, it's not that big a difference. Christ was trying to say that marriage is an important thing, that it is something that needs to be entered into very heavily and thoughtful in prayer, not entered into lightly, and that it's not it's not just another part of a relationship, that it's something that's between God and the two people that go into that marriage, which should be a man and a woman. And again, he's saying, don't go into this thinking that you got it out and you can just do whatever you need to do. because you have to work at that. It's just like every other relationship that you have. The more you put into it, the stronger that's going to be. But Christ is telling them again, it's this, where is your heart? Again, that's what's on my, the Spirit's speaking to me this morning. It's like, where is your heart? Or is you chasing after God? Are you letting Him lead you? Or are you letting Him guide you? Or, and if you letting Him lead, He's not going to lead you down the wrong road. He's going to always, bring you closer to Him. And all these things in this world, again, like I said, if they're drawing you away from Him, they're drawing you away from that straight and narrow path, the center of His will, then they're not from Him, because He's not going to be confusing. The devil is the author of all confusion and lies. God's going to tell you the truth, and He's going to always draw you closer to Him. Verse 33, again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shall perform unto the Lord thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it's God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is the footstool, for it is His footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. So Christ is telling you here too, don't make swearful oaths among men. It's like, don't do these things. It's like, because I guess the occasion of the time, that's what they were doing, back when a man's word meant more than what it does now. In this society, a man's word don't mean very much. That's why we have to have contracts when you go to buy a car, buy a house, all these other things. Back in that day, they could settle it with a handshake, because if somebody said something, they meant it. But He's telling you not to swear oaths. And then whatever you do, with men, don't do these things, because you never know how they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. You don't know what's going to happen with you. We'll get on to explaining that here in just a minute. But He says, definitely don't swear by heaven. It's like, well, I'll do this, I promise this by heaven or whatever it may be. You don't ever do that, because heaven's not yours yet. That's God's throne. That's where He is. So we shouldn't ever swear by Him, because that's falsely tying Him to your promise. And we can't speak for God. God speaks for us. We can repeat what He's told us in this Word. But, I would not ever want to say, well, I know what God would do, and because I know what He would say or do. If it's contrary to this Word, that's not going to be the truth. And, you're putting yourself in danger there, blasphemy and things. You don't want to do stuff like that. It says, don't swear by this earth, of course, because that's His footstool. We don't own this earth. We're just renting places here, and, we're traveling through. Nobody's going to stay here. Whether you're saved or you're lost, you're not going to stay here. When your body goes and your spirit goes to judgment, if we're washed in that blood and saved and doing the best you could, being obedient to God, you go to heaven. If not, you'll be cast away and rejected into hell, and you'll be cast into the lake of fire. So we can't swear by heaven or earth, neither one. And it says, don't swear by Jerusalem, because that's the great city. That's the city that God set apart, and you don't do that either. Going on, and He says, neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst make one hair white or black. Well, what does He mean by that? Well, we have no control over our life. We don't know. We can't make ourselves healthy. We can't make ourselves live forever. We don't know when we're going out of here. When we're born, that clock starts, and God holds that clock in His hand. And He has the power over our life and our death and the things that we do. We don't have that. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. We don't know if we'll make it home today. So we shouldn't swear by things that we don't understand or know. You might tell somebody, if you do this, then I swear I'll work for you for the next 10 years and I'll do this or that. Well, we don't know that we have that 10 years. So He's saying, don't be making oaths. Don't be making swears to anybody else. The only thing we should do is make that oath to God that we'll be obedient to Him and serve Him as long as we're here. But we shouldn't be doing these things with men, because, like I said, we have no control over our own selves and our own lives. Plus, too, when we're bought, when we're saved and we're washed in that blood, we're blood bought. We now owe our lives to Christ because He paid for us. So we don't need to be making any commitments, especially to men, in this world, because we don't own ourselves anymore. We owe our lives to Christ. We're supposed to be serving God. So, we need to make that oath to God. Hey, I'm going to serve you the rest of my life and do the best that I can. And that's the only one we should be doing. We shouldn't be doing this with men. Going on. But verse 37, but let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Again, just say, hey, if I'm able to make it tomorrow, I'll be there. Lord willing, I'll be there. We don't want to completely say, yeah, for sure I'll be there, because we don't know what's going to happen. We may get sick. something else may happen. A car might break down. We might not be able to get there. But, we'll just say that we do the best we can. And again, like I said, it just opens doors to evil when we make promises or oaths and do all these other stuff. Verse 38, ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. That may be one of the hardest things that you're going to read and see in this word to think about, because that flesh loves that idea to get back at somebody. If they do something to you, you do it right back. The flesh loves that, and this world likes to say that. Well, he did that to you. You owe him that. You owe him that. You need to go get revenge. You need to get him back and settle that score, make things even. In the old times it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But Christ is saying, he goes, there's a better way here. Because, there's that old story talking about that, if somebody offends you and you do the same thing back to them and you take an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, eventually everybody's going to be blind and nobody's going to have any teeth. Because there's going to be things happen to everybody. So Christ is saying there's a better way to do this. If somebody offends you, love them just like he did. When he says here, if they smite you on the right cheek, turn the other to them also. He actually did that. When we read about that, when they were taking him in and put him on trial, and they beat him and they were smacking him and they were mocking him, telling him to prophesy and tell us who hit it. Who hit you? If you're who you say you are. He kept his mouth shut and he sat there and he let them do what they did. I'm not saying that you have to stand there and let somebody beat you to death, but the idea here is that you're going to love people that hurt you and offend you. And Christ is going to talk more about this as we go on. But the idea is, that if somebody wrongs you, two wrongs don't make a right. Just because you get them back and even that score in this world, well, now you've wronged them. And so you've acted out of anger and wrath, and that wasn't out of love and peace and mercy and grace. So we're saying don't do these things. We have to be more like what Christ is, as he's our example. Verse 40. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. I think he's trying to say here too in this is like, if you've wronged somebody, make it right. Go the extra mile with them. And, to try to correct things if you've done something wrong. But it's also here too that we're not clinging to these earthly things and possessions that we have. We don't need to have the things that we have. They don't need to have us. Our home, our vehicles, our clothes and the toys that we have, whether it be, four-wheelers or fishing rods, boats, whatever it is your hobby is, whatever it may be, we shouldn't be clung to those things and love them so much that losing them would destroy us. That we have to love God more than the things that we have, because we're not taking any of this stuff with us. The only thing you're taking is your soul with you. When your body dies, your soul, that's who you are, and that's who you're leaving with. And then whatever you've done to serve the Lord, or what you've done to serve this world, is what you're going to take with you. And if you've served this world, you'll be rejected and cast out in the lake of fire. If you've served the Lord and done the best you could, you'll be accepted and you'll gain heaven. That's all you're taking with you. So I think here he's trying to tell us, don't be caught up in these things of the world, the possessions that we have. We need to love God more. Verse 41, and whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Again, like I just said earlier there, it's like if somebody asks you to help them to do something, help them and then do a little extra. Love them, show them a little bit more than what they ask for, and over-deliver. That's what God does with us. If you think about that, when you're serving him and doing everything he asks you to do and you're his child, does he not bless you more than anything you could imagine? Your relationship with him and your life with him, that spiritual life, is it not more than you ever thought it was going to be? And it's better today than it was yesterday. And it's going to be better tomorrow than it was today when you're serving him. And so give a little more, because God does that. And then as good as he is to us here, we can't even imagine how great heaven's going to be. So, again, it's like God always gives us a little more. We need to do the same thing for those around us and show them love and help them all we can. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. Man, does the world not love that? The people that are good to you, love them, but if they don't like you or they're mean to you, hate them and make them an enemy out of them. And try to destroy them and tear them down. Well, that's what the enemy wants you to do. That's what the devil wants. That's what this world is like. But what does it say Christ here? He says, but verse 44, But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. That's a tough one to swallow, isn't it? To think about that. Like, what do you mean, love the people that hate me? And if they curse me and they run me down and they tell everybody that I'm no good and that this and that and they lie about me, and I'm supposed to do good to them, and I'm supposed to bless them, and I'm supposed to pray for them when they've been mean to me and use me wrong and persecute me? What did Christ do? Every time I think about, man, I can't do that. And it's like, God, do you know what they've said? Do you know what they did? And they got me in trouble, and they did this, and they did that, and they caused all this kind of trouble for me. And then, the Spirit's like, well, what did they do to Jesus? He was innocent completely. And they put him on trial. They lied against him. They had him beaten and whipped half to death. And they put him on a cross and killed him. And he was hanging there, and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So what right do I have to stand on to hold a grudge against anybody? We don't. I'm talking to me. I'm talking to you all. It's like, and it's hard. But that's the thing. The funny thing is that this word is true. And if you apply this and you try to live it, things are going to happen and God's going to change. He's going to change your situations. But Daniel has found out that 99 times out of 100, he changes Daniel and not the other person. Because, he says here, pray for those that hate you and despitefully use you. When you start praying for somebody, it's going to start being hard to hate them. At first, it's going to still be easy. That flesh is going to be like, yeah, I really just don't like them. They're still annoying. But just keep praying for them. A day or two goes by, a week or two, a month, maybe a year or two goes by. But if you honestly in your heart pray for somebody and pray for God to move, He's going to change you. And you're going to look at them different. And you're going to understand, hey, this person's lost. They don't know they're only living to what they know. And all they know is this world. You can't judge somebody by the same standards that if they're still living in this world that you are. They need to see the light. They need to be saved. They need to be brought out of that darkness. And so if you're spreading darkness to them, if they give darkness to you and you give it back to them, you're not helping them any. But if you give them light back, if you give them hope, if you give them peace back, when they're angry and they give you war and you give them peace, then they can maybe say, hey, wait a minute. They're not acting like everybody else. If I go and cuss this person or get them in trouble, they do the same thing back to me. And I understand that, whatever, and then we can keep fighting. But if you bless them when they curse you, if you're good to them when they're bad to you, then maybe God can open a door there. Maybe that's what's gonna put a crack there and that hardness in their heart and let the Spirit move in on them. And that's what Christ is saying here. It's like, pray for them. And if nothing else, it'll change you and your attitude. That's the thing that Daniel's been doing a lot here lately about God change my attitude, because I finally realized after all these years that I'm the biggest problem that I have. And my attitude and the way I respond to the things that go on around me is what the problem is. It's not the situation that I'm in, it's me and how I respond to it. I've got to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to clean my heart out every day and say, God, wash me in that blood. Take this word and run it through me in my mind and my heart and let your Spirit fill me back up and fix these. Cut out this darkness and this bitterness, this sadness, this pain, whatever it is that's in me, that's causing me to be angry and to not be right with you. Fix it, because I've realized I'm the problem. And we realize that, then God can use us, but that's part of that humbling ourselves down and understanding, and forgiving those that may not ever ask for forgiveness. Maybe they don't ever ask for it, but you know what? We still need to offer it, and we still need to give it to them whether they take it or not. That way, we've done all that we can. And then maybe it'll be surprising one day. Maybe when you offer it, then maybe they'll take it. And then maybe they'll say, you know what? You shouldn't ask me for forgiveness. I've been wronging you. And then the Lord can move in that. And He can bring peace. But, Christ is saying, if we're like this world, we're not going to be any different than this world. We have to be different. Verse 45, that ye may be the children of your Father, which is in heaven, for He maketh His sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. So what does that mean? God's going to give everybody the same chances and the same opportunities. The sun's going to rise on you, whether you're good, bad, or ugly. And it's going to rain, on the just and the unjust. The evil and the good. This world is going to still keep spinning around. The sun's going to come up. It's going to go back down. The rain's going to come. The rain's going to pass on everybody. We all have the same opportunities. But it's like, who's going to serve him? You know, the ones that seek him out, the ones that try to find him, the ones that are trying to serve him, they're going to be carried through, and they're going to be his sons and daughters. The ones that love this world and reject God and reject Jesus Christ, reject this world, they're going to be sons and daughters of this world, and they're going to be rejected, and then, you know, we know what's coming there. So again, it's like, which one are we going to be? Are we going to be like Christ and serve the Lord? Or are we going to be like this world and serve ourselves and the devil? That's the choice that we have. And there's no other choice in that. There's no timeouts. There's no in-betweens. It's like, you know, you're his or you're not. And that choice is on us. Verse 46. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And the publicans here, that just means like the tax collectors, which they were, you know, in that day, they were thought of as kind of low down, and they were cheats and sneaks and things like that. It's the same thing like what he would have said about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You know, they're not really true. They're hypocritical kind of things, you know. And he's saying, you know, is it really love if you love somebody because they love you? Or is it a deeper love when you love somebody that doesn't love you? You know, when Christ went to the cross, he was loving us and God was loving us, and we didn't know, you know, we were lost, we were broken, we didn't know what we were doing, just like he said, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they do. You know, we didn't understand love until we loved God, but he had to love us first. When he loved us, he taught us what love is. And so, you know, if we only love those that are loving us, that's not really a true, deep spiritual love. A spiritual love is when you can love somebody that hates you. And, you know, that's what God showed us with the cross. That's what Christ did and the sacrifice that he made. So he's saying, you know, are you going to be mine? Or are you going to be of this world? He goes, are you any better than these people here that, you know, that are just in the world enjoying that and rejecting me? And are you going to be better? Are you going to step out? You know, or are you going to step up and come up to where I'm at? In verse 47, and if ye salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? And again, he's saying, he's like, you've got to be different. You've got to be peculiar. You've got to stand out in this world. It's like, you know, if you only like people that are the same as you, that talk like you, walk like you, dress like you, think the same things as you do, it's like, what kind of challenge is that? You're basically still loving yourself. It's like when you can see others and appreciate the differences that they have and who they are. You know, God's created each and every one of us to be special and unique. You know, that's why we all don't look alike. That's why we all don't talk alike. We all have different talents and abilities. And God made us all that way so we can work together and complete all the tasks that he has for us to do and his will to be done. So again, you know, we have to stretch out in love, you know, and that starts in the heart. And it starts with what we feed our minds and our souls. You know, this word and the truth and praying and trying to get closer to God and have more of Christ and have more of the Spirit in us. And that's what's going to change and make us more like him. Verse 48, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Now, of course, while we're here and we're in this flesh and blood, we're not going to be perfect. But he's painting it's more of a spiritual thing here, in that we're working towards being perfect. We're working towards being righteous and being holy and serving him, knowing this word, living this word, letting this word guide us and direct us, and that we're seeking him in all things in our life. You know, we don't make decisions without him, you know, and we let the Spirit guide us and this word guide us, and we're walking in this word, we're living it, and we're doing the best that we can. And so, you know, he's telling us, he's calling us out to be separate from this world, to be full of the Spirit, to be living this word, to understand this word, you know, and we have to study it. We have to know it. And to understand that, you know, it's like Christ was a living embodiment of this word. And that's why he was able to live a perfect life, because he knew the word, and he never did anything without praying before he did it. And then going back to the word, it's like, well, the word says to do this, and so that's what he did. He followed what his Father had told him and taught him to do. And he never varied from that. And so that's what we need to try to do. We need to get to that point to say, okay, this situation's happening in my life. Well, the word says to do this. Well, that's the way to go, because this is God's word. It can't be wrong. It's never wrong. It's perfect. So if I do this, then God's going to be pleased with me, and I can move on, and this is the best way to handle that. And that's in our heart. That's how we're going to live more perfectly. We're going to live more holy and more righteous by living this word out. And we're going to be more like Christ, which is going to make us, to be in the Father's will. So that's what we have to do. So again, going back through this morning, it's all about where your heart's at. What's in your heart. And that's going to be what's going to come out of your mouth. That's what's going to come out of your actions. And how you're going to treat people and how you're going to live your life is what's in your heart. And if you're full of wrath and anger in this world, that's what's going to come out of you. And that's going to be the fruit that you bear. It's going to be rotten and horrible. And it's going to stink. And then, of course, it's going to lead to death. If you're full of this word, you're full of His holiness, His righteousness, Christ is leading you, then you're going to have peace. You're going to have mercy. You're going to have love. And it's going to be because you realize that that's what's been shown to you. God's blessed you with that. And you want to touch others with that also. Because we got to go back and think, if nobody took the time to love us at our worst and to share Jesus Christ with us and share God's word with us, where would we be? We would be right back there where we were, and we never would have got out because nobody ever shared the light with us. But if we share that light with those that are in the dark, dark and dark just makes things darker. But if there's a darkness there in somebody and you share the light with them, that light can break through. It can chase away that dark, and then that light can spread to them. That's what we need to do. And if our hearts are full of that light, then we can share that. If our heart's full of darkness, then that's what we're going to share. So again, it's all about where your heart is, and then where that's going to change your mind. It's going to change your actions and your words, and it's going to lead you on to heaven. If you're full of the Spirit and the truth, or if you're full of this world, it'll lead you the other direction. So that's where we are this morning. Where's your heart?